Beyond human endurance, the psychology of the Maldives cave tragedy. 5 divers entered a deep underwater cave in the Maldives. None of them came back, but a 6th member of the group did. She was prepared to dive. She was there, and at the last moment, she stayed on the boat. That single decision separated her from 5 people who would never return. But this story raises another question that has received far less attention. What happens inside the human brain when an experienced diver realizes that training, equipment, and time may no longer be enough? What happens when darkness removes visual reference? When depth alters judgment? When carbon dioxide rises? When breathing becomes harder? When the exit cannot immediately be found? At what point does a trained human being stop solving the problem logically and begin simply trying to survive? We do not yet possess a verified public second-by-second psychological reconstruction of what happened inside that Maldives cave. Investigators recovered cameras, dive computers, and equipment that may eventually help answer those questions. So what follows is not a claim that we know what each diver thought. It is an examination of what diving medicine and human psychology tell us can happen when people are placed under this combination of pressure, darkness, gas stress, and fear. And it begins with something almost invisible: nitrogen. At depth, ordinary breathing gas does not behave psychologically the way it does at the surface. As pressure increases, nitrogen can produce a narcotic effect on the brain. Divers sometimes compare it to intoxication, but that description can make it sound almost harmless. It isn't. Narcosis can interfere with judgment. It can make concentration difficult. It can slow reactions. It can create unusual confidence. Or it can produce anxiety and fear. Most dangerously, the diver experiencing it may not fully appreciate how impaired he or she has become. Imagine entering a cave roughly 50 to 60 meters beneath the surface. There is no sunlight. There is no horizon. There may be no obvious visual indication of up or down. Your entire world is reduced to a mask, a light beam, your instruments, and whatever portion of the cave appears immediately in front of you. Now introduce narcosis. The brain that must interpret that environment may already be operating below normal capacity. A wrong passage may look reasonable. A decision that would normally take seconds can take longer. A diver may repeat a failed action because the brain is becoming less effective at generating alternatives. And then another physiological problem can enter the picture. Carbon dioxide. Every diver produces carbon dioxide. Normally, you breathe it out. But deep diving increases the work required to breathe. The gas itself becomes denser. Exertion increases carbon dioxide production. Stress increases breathing demands. And under some diving conditions, carbon dioxide can begin accumulating faster than the diver effectively removes it. This matters because high carbon dioxide doesn't merely make someone uncomfortable. It can create intense breathlessness, headache, confusion, a feeling that the regulator isn't delivering enough gas even when it is functioning, and eventually, panic or unconsciousness. Now imagine the psychological effect. You know you are breathing, you can feel gas arriving, but your brain is screaming that you are suffocating. So you breathe harder, you swim harder, you fight the environment. The harder you work, the more carbon dioxide you produce. And now a vicious cycle begins. More effort, more CO2, more air hunger, more fear, more effort. This is one of the cruelest traps in deep diving because the diver's instinctive response can make the underlying physiological problem worse. And nitrogen narcosis may make recognizing that process even more difficult. Now add complete darkness. Human beings depend heavily on vision to understand where they are. Remove visual reference and spatial orientation deteriorates rapidly. Inside a cave, there is another psychological problem. The surface is no longer directly available. A recreational diver in open water who experiences overwhelming fear may have one powerful instinct: go up. Inside an underwater cave, up may simply mean rock. The normal escape route of the human brain has disappeared. That difference changes everything. When an emergency begins, trained divers attempt to use procedures. Check the gas, locate the guideline, signal the buddy, control breathing, identify the exit. Do not panic. Those procedures require executive function, the ability to suppress instinct, evaluate information, remember training, prioritize tasks, and choose between competing options. But extreme stress attacks exactly those abilities. Attention begins narrowing. Instead of seeing 5 possible solutions, a frightened person may see only one. Instead of calmly checking several instruments, they may fixate on one problem. Instead of changing strategy after a failed attempt, they may repeat the same action. This phenomenon isn't unique to diving. Human beings under extreme threat frequently develop tunnel vision. The brain begins allocating resources toward immediate survival. Fine motor control may deteriorate. Complex decision-making becomes harder. Working memory shrinks. And this is where a technically skilled person can begin behaving in ways that seem irrational when examined afterward from the safety of the surface. That does not mean training disappears. It means training is now competing against millions of years of survival biology. And biology is loud. Now consider the gas supply. Every breath becomes part of the psychological clock. A pressure gauge is not simply an instrument anymore. It is displaying remaining life. At the beginning of an emergency, a diver might have several options. Turn around, search, help another diver, share gas, attempt another passage, but every minute removes options. Gas falls, decompression obligations remain. The distance from the surface has not changed, and the cave still has to be exited before an ascent can even begin. The psychological pressure becomes enormous. Imagine watching the needle fall. 100 bar, 70, 50, 30. Every number changes the calculation. Eventually, the diver may reach a point where the brain understands something terrifying. There may not be enough gas to execute the complete solution. That realization can fundamentally alter behavior. Technical training depends on planning ahead. Panic lives entirely in the present. Training says, slow down, think, conserve gas, follow procedure. The survival instinct says, move, find the exit, now. And once that conflict begins, physical exertion can increase dramatically. Gas consumption rises. Carbon dioxide rises. Visibility can deteriorate if sediment is disturbed. The environment becomes even harder to interpret. The very attempt to escape can make escape more difficult. This is why cave diving accidents can produce such brutal feedback loops. Disorientation causes movement. Movement disturbs silt. Silt reduces visibility. Poor visibility creates more disorientation. Disorientation increases stress. Stress increases breathing. Breathing consumes more gas. Less gas creates greater stress. Each problem feeds the next. Eventually, there may no longer be one emergency. There is an entire system collapsing simultaneously. And this is the point where discussions of the Maldives tragedy become psychologically important. It is easy for somebody sitting at home to say, why didn't they simply do this? Why didn't they follow the exit? Why didn't they remain calm? Why didn't they share gas? Why didn't they turn around earlier? Those are legitimate investigative questions. But human performance at 60 meters inside a dark cave cannot be judged as though the brain is operating at a kitchen table. Depth matters. Breathing resistance matters. Gas density matters. Carbon dioxide matters. Narcosis matters. Sensory deprivation matters. Fear matters. And once several of those factors combine, even experienced people can lose cognitive performance. Divers Alert Network has documented that panic can narrow attention and reduce a diver's ability to evaluate available options. And importantly, panic is not restricted to beginners. Experienced divers can experience it as well. One trigger Dan identifies as exactly the kind of environment involved here: loss of orientation in caves and other overhead environments. Now there is another side to this tragedy. The person who did not enter the water, the sixth member of the group. Public reports say she made the decision at the last moment to stay aboard. We do not need to invent what she felt afterward. Unless she chooses to describe that experience publicly, those emotions belong to her. But psychology gives us a name for the burden that sometimes follows surviving when others do not. Survivor guilt. The mind begins creating impossible alternative histories. What if I had gone? Could I have helped? Why them and not me? What if I had said something? What if we had canceled the dive? Those questions can repeat for months or years despite the survivor having no realistic ability to change what happened. Traumatic events can also produce intrusive memories, avoidance, anxiety, and changes in the way a person responds to reminders of the event. And sometimes the person who survives physically must then survive psychologically. That may become another important part of this case. Not just what happened beneath the water, but what happens afterward to the people left behind. Families, friends, colleagues, recovery divers, investigators, and the person who watched 5 people enter the water while remaining on the boat. There is also something important this tragedy can teach without pretending the investigation is finished. Safety systems cannot rely on human performance remaining perfect. Humans do not remain perfect under extreme stress. That is why technical diving uses redundancy, extra gas, multiple lights, continuous guidelines, team procedures, conservative planning. Those systems exist because eventually somebody becomes confused. Eventually equipment fails. Eventually visibility disappears. Eventually somebody breathes harder than expected. Eventually a seemingly simple problem becomes several problems at once. Good safety engineering assumes that human beings will make mistakes, and then it gives them room to survive those mistakes. The deepest lesson from the Maldives tragedy may therefore have very little to do with bravery, or experience, or confidence. It may be something far more uncomfortable. There is a boundary beyond which the human brain becomes another piece of equipment operating under stress. And unlike a pressure gauge, the brain cannot always tell you when it has stopped functioning normally. Narcosis can distort judgment. Carbon dioxide can create air hunger and panic. Darkness can destroy orientation. Fear can narrow attention. And dwindling gas can transform a technical problem into an existential one. One by one, the layers of rational decision-making can disappear. Not because the diver suddenly becomes inexperienced, but because human cognition has limits. 5 experienced people entered that cave. A 6th remained aboard. Investigators are still trying to determine exactly what separated the planned dive from the catastrophe that followed. Perhaps the cameras and dive computers will eventually reveal more. Perhaps we will someday know the route, the depth profile, the gas levels, the sequence of movement, maybe even the moment something first went wrong. But electronic data can only tell us so much. A computer can record depth, it can record time, it can record ascent and descent, a camera can record movement, but neither can completely record fear, confusion, air hunger, or the moment a human being realizes that the way home is no longer obvious. That may be the final puzzle inside the Maldives cave. Not simply where the divers went, but what extreme depth, darkness, and physiological stress did to their ability to find their way back. Because sometimes the most dangerous failure underwater isn't the regulator, it isn't the computer, and it isn't even the cave. It is the moment the human mind becomes overwhelmed by an environment it was never designed to survive.